Action.
Okay, so this is the dissection of the brain. We're going to look at the cerebrum first, only because that's what's visible. The biggest part of the brain is the cerebrum. Again, guys, remember that there's two hemispheres. There's a left hemisphere here and a right hemisphere here. It's separated by the longitudinal fissure. Okay, the longitudinal fissure. Below here, there is the cerebellum, right? This is referred to as the little brain. There's another fissure here called the transverse fissure, right? So the longitudinal fissure and the transverse fissure. I just want to show you real quick. On this model, this is representing the top of the skull. There is a piece of tissue, it's a piece of meninges that comes down into the longitudinal fissure. This is called the falx cerebri. It helps to stabilize the brain. We can see here, this part of the falx cerebri attaches to the crista gallia, the ethmoid bone. Okay, so here's the whole falx cerebri. Here's the part that attaches to the crista gallia. So it's going to sit right inside there. In the transverse fissure, where the cerebellum was, like that, there's another stabilizing structure. This is called the tentorium cerebelli. It actually sits in the transverse fissure, so that's called the tentorium cerebelli, like that. Okay, and then between the right and left hemispheres of the cerebellum, we'll see it on this model. The cerebellum would sit like right in here. This structure right there, this tissue would come up. That's the tentorium. The falx cerebelli. It separates the left and the right cerebellar lobes. And so those are the three stabilizing structures you need to know. Falx cerebri, falx cerebelli right there, tentorium cerebelli. It's kind of like that. It goes crossways. Now, there are outward folds, right, to fit the brain in this vault. All these outward folds, because I know Karen, there's a couple people that had a little bit of questions on this. Right here, guys, all these outward folds, that's the gyrus. There you are. Sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah, the bulging out, the outward folds. Okay, so those are the gyri. Now the grooves going in between the gyri, those are sulcus. Right. This was a longitudinal fissure. A fissure is deep. Right, sulci are shallow. Right, so we want to be able to differentiate between a sulcus and a gyrus. Yes, all these outward folds are gyri. The inward fold is the sulcus. This is the left hemisphere. This is the right hemisphere. Right, longitudinal fissure I did already. I did the falx.
I can't see.
I'm reviewing. We did it already. Come around the other side then if you can't. That way. Let's do the lobes of the brain. So in the front, this is the frontal lobe. It goes all the way up here to the central sulcus. The central sulcus separates the frontal lobe from back here. This is the parietal lobe. Okay? So frontal lobe, parietal lobe. Okay? Oh wait, yeah, Sybil's coming around again. Thank you, Sybil. This was the frontal lobe. Goes right here to the central sulcus. And then from here, this is the parietal lobe. In the back, by the occipital bone, what's this? Occipital lobe. Okay. On the sides over here, I'll show you this way. This is the temporal lobe. Guys, over here, uncolored, this is the temporal lobe. Okay. There's an important sulcus. It separates, like I said, the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. It goes all the way over the top of the brain right here. This is called the central sulcus. Right? That one I'm going to ask you also, the central sulcus. The gyrus in front of the central sulcus, this is the pre-central gyrus. This is where all of your voluntary motor nerve transmissions come from. So everything that you do voluntarily comes from here. This blue one on this model is the post-central gyrus, right here. The post-central gyrus. Everything coming up from your body to sense, you sense here, you perceive it there. That's the post-central gyrus. All right, that's part of the parietal lobe. The occipital lobe, the main feature here, guys, it perceives vision. Okay, the temporal lobe here perceives things like smell, sound, that type of thing. All right, smell and sound are the big ones. All right, so those are the lobes that you need to know. If I open this gently, a couple other things around the cerebrum. Connecting the left and the right cerebrum is this large C-shaped structure. This is the corpus callosum. All right, so there's fibers that are going from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain. Now, inside the brain, we have these cavities called ventricles. Here is a wall separating a ventricle from the left brain from the right brain. This is called the septum pellucidum. Again, it's a wall. This right here is the fornix. It kind of forms the floor of the ventricles. Like I said, it does some other things a little bit beyond the scope of this course. All right, so that's it pretty much for the structures of the cerebrum. The diencephalon area, that's right in here. Right? The only way we're going to see it is inside, deep in the middle of the brain. Anything that has the name thalamus belongs to the diencephalon. Thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, right? If it has the name thalamus, you're going to find it in this little region. So guys, this egg-shaped region right here, this is the thalamus. Like I said before, it's a major relay station of sensory information to the brain. Connecting the left side of the thalamus with the right side, there's a little structure here in the midline. This is called the intermediate mass. All right, that's what I call it. We also call it, I forget the name of it, the interthalamic adhesion. So whatever you want to use, I like intermediate mass. So that's the thalamus and the intermediate mass. This groove around the thalamus is the third ventricle. All right, so there's two ventricles in the brain. They're called lateral ventricles. Here's the third ventricle. Okay, so that's it for the thalamus. This area here in front, this is the hypothalamus. Right there, the hypothalamus. One part of the hypothalamus is this little protrusion right here. This is called the mammillary body. Okay? The epithalamus is above the thalamus, so that's kind of going this way. This red line right here, this is the choroid plexus. These are very vascular blood vessels, capillaries. So that's the choroid plexus. And we don't see it on this model. I'm going to use this one for a minute. Here's the choroid plexus. Right back here, this is the pineal gland. Right, we don't see it on that model for some reason. We just see it back here. This is the pineal gland. This produces melatonin, kind of suppresses the nervous system. Okay, so that's the three: hypothalamus, epithalamus, and thalamus. Okay, as far as the cerebellum, right? Remember, there's two lobes, two hemispheres. Excuse me, left and right hemispheres. Connected in the middle by this body right here. This is called the vermis. All right, so the two hemispheres and the vermis. If we open this up like this, we look into it, you'll see it actually looks like a tree type of thing. The white matter forms the arbor vitae, like that. That's all white matter. And then on the sides of the white matter, that's this cerebellar gray matter, or we call it the cerebellar cortex. Right? It's gray matter. And so that's all cortex around there. The white matter is deep, called arbor vitae. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything, guys, on your... Right, we did the facts already. Finally, on the brainstem, Jessica, where's that? Where is she? Do you have that one model for me, please? Thank you. Thank you. So on the brainstem, guys, I'll use this one because it's pretty complete. There's three parts of the brainstem. We said the brainstem is very instinctual things, heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, all that kind of stuff. This lower part, continuous with the spinal cord, is the medulla. The part that looks like a walnut right there, the round one, pons. Good. And then up here, midbrain. Okay, so medulla, pons, midbrain. Now, just continuing down, this was the third ventricle here. The fluid from the third ventricle goes down this long tube. This is called the cerebral aqueduct. From there, it goes into the final ventricle called the fourth ventricle. It's always triangular shape. It's between the cerebellum and the brainstem. That's the fourth ventricle. From there, the fluid is going to go into the central canal of the spinal cord and also go into the subarachnoid space. Right, I'm going to go over that in lecture. I have a nice set of notes for you on that. The only thing I didn't go over that I just remembered, and what are the chances of that going together? No. Let me just put this together for a minute. Even when I remember the olfactory nerve and the optic nerve and the chiasm, I skipped that. Sorry, it just popped into my head. The only thing I didn't go over, kind of connected to the cerebrum, these right here, guys, are cranial nerve number 1. This is the olfactory bulbs. See that look like a little light bulb, right? From there, that leads to the olfactory tract. That's going to go to your temporal lobe where you perceive what you smell. Like say you smell perfume or you smell rotten eggs, whatever it is. That sensation of perceiving it is the temporal lobe over here. So that's the olfactory bulb, olfactory tract. These right here are the optic nerves. They're coming from the eyeball. That's cranial nerve number 2. But interesting, the cranial nerves, the one from the right side of the brain, actually crosses to the left, and the left one crosses to the right. So that crossing right there, optic chiasm. Chiasm means to cross, right? So that's the optic chiasm for everybody to see it right there. Here's the optic nerves, and then here's the chiasm. Okay. Again, if you missed anything on my models, guys, on YouTube, there's a bunch of similar videos that maybe a little bit closer if you didn't get anything, but